Back in the 19 and 1800s, how did the uber wealthy used to spend their fortunes? Well, lavish parties, lengthy vacation tours, opulent homes, they did it all. But one favourite pastime for the rich and famous back then was to take to the water. If I asked you to think of a super yacht, you'd probably picture something like this, a massive, hypermodern ship with dedicated tender boats, sharp lines, and modern, comfortable interiors. In fact, you may just think it's a modern-day thing. But super yachts have been around for a long, long time, and they flourished in the days of steam power when some of the world's biggest names like Vanderbilt, Astor, and Romanov enjoyed holidays aboard some seriously impressive boats. From yachts as luxurious as the world's most famous passenger liners to boats impressive enough to serve during wartime. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs, coming to you from the beautiful Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. And today we're going to look at 4 seriously impressive and very beautiful super yachts from history. Now to start with, you've probably heard of Dodge cars. They're an American staple, a classic car manufacturer. One of the founders had a big passion for vehicles that you would expect to find at sea as well. Horace Dodge was a co-founder of the famous car company, but he was also a very keen yachtsman and boating fanatic. With the explosion in popularity of the Dodge Company's vehicles through the 1910s, by the end of the decade, Horace was ready to show off his extravagant wealth with a yacht of epic proportions. In 1920, he commissioned the Great Lakes Engineering Works in Michigan to build a steam yacht named after his daughter, Delphine. The vessel was launched in April 1921, and at the time was one of the largest and most sophisticated private yachts in the world, coming in at a whopping 257 feet or 78 meters in length. The yacht's design was a collaborative effort, with Dodge actually actively assisting in the design of the massive quadruple expansion steam engines. But then, as construction was underway, tragedy struck. Both of the Dodge brothers died suddenly from influenza, and Horace would never live to see his pet project completed. But what a project it was! Dodge's wife assumed control, and the ship was actually finished in 1921, becoming a favourite vacation vessel for the entire family. The interiors of Delphine were nothing short of extraordinary. Dodge had spared no expense in outfitting the yacht with the finest materials and craftsmanship available. The decor was an eclectic mix of Edwardian and Tiffany styles, featuring rich wood panelling, ornate plasterwork, stunning coloured glass, and sumptuous fabrics. The main salon was a grand space designed for relaxation and entertainment, with plush seating, intricate woodwork, and large windows that provided panoramic views of the sea. At one end sat a magnificent pipe organ, which cost an eye-watering $60,000. That's $900,000 today, by the way. There was a sprawling dining saloon and cabins for up to 24 people, each fitted with their own ensuite bathrooms. All of this, by the way, in an era where most luxury ocean liners at the time still made use of communal toilets, even in first class. After Dodge's death in 1920, Delphine remained in the Dodge family's possession until World War II, when the US Navy requisitioned the yacht and converted it into a patrol vessel, renaming it USS Dauntless. After the war, it was returned to the Dodge family, who eventually sold it to private owners. By the late 20th century, Delphine had sadly fallen into disrepair, facing the threat of being scrapped. But then, in the late 90s, a significant restoration project was undertaken by Belgian businessmen which aimed to return Delphine to her former glory. The restoration process was meticulous, involving the refurbishment of the yacht's original steam engines, repairs to her steel hull, and the recreation of its lavish interiors and original layout, which had actually since been altered. Skilled craftsmen and engineers worked tirelessly to make sure that every detail was authentic and true to the original design. The project took several years to complete and required a substantial financial investment, around 45 million euros. No kidding. Today, Delphine is one of the few remaining steam-powered yachts in the world and serves as a luxury charter vessel based in the Mediterranean. Around the time of the Monaco Grand Prix, you can usually find Delphine moored there, and F1 stars usually on board. You can actually charter the vessel yourself and host around 11 of your friends on board. But just note, it will cost you up to about 600,000 euros, or about 640,000 US dollars per week. If you do it, please send me an invite. Now we're going to move away from private yachts for a moment to ships of state. I was just recently visiting some friends in Ohio, and one of them brought this magnificent ship to my attention, so thank you, Jeff. The excesses of the Russian royal family are legendary and partly led to the revolutions and uprisings that would eventually form the Soviet Union. Alexander III commissioned the yacht Standard in 1893 as a visual manifestation of Russia's empiric and nautical might. The ship is often considered to be one of, if not the, finest yachts ever built. More like a passenger steamship than anything, Standard was an enormous ocean-going vessel that effectively acted as a floating palace for the royal family. She was built in Denmark by the famous shipyard Burmeister and Wain, which would one day go on to make huge inroads in diesel engine propulsion. The steel-hulled ship was about 401 feet, 122 metres in length, and some 5,500 tonnes. In fact, she was only around a third shorter than Cunard Line's newest and greatest oceanliner of the day, RMS Campania. From the outside, the ship looked charmingly old-fashioned, but she was really technologically cutting-edge, with a steel hull and a pair of huge triple-expansion steam engines. Standard eventually became a familiar haunt of Tsar Nicholas II and his family, since Alexander III had died before she was finished. The ship was a striking sight, with a massive gilt eagle figurehead at the old-fashioned bowsprit, and her powerful engines combined with her fine lines ensured that she could hit a comfortable top speed of 21 knots. Very impressive. On the inside, the Standard was suitably palatial, with incredibly expensive furnishings, crystal chandeliers, and a dining saloon large enough to sit more than 70 guests for a single mealtime. Velvet curtains crowned delicately decorated windows, sitting rooms, formal salons, and private suites. They all filled the ship's hull, and nestled away in one compartment was a fully equipped and richly decorated chapel. To be a guest on board Standard was to experience the absolute best of Imperial Russian hospitality and craftsmanship in one. Unfortunately, history would dictate that Tsar Nicholas II's reign would soon be cut short. In 1917, the Russian Revolution overthrew the Tsar, and he and his family were infamously executed. Left in their wake were their leftover sumptuous palaces and, of course, the magnificent Standard. Such was the quality of her construction and performance that she was actually stripped and converted into a mine layer, serving through to the Second World War. Almost completely unrecognisable, and having been renamed Marty after a leading French communist leader, the venerable old ship served as a training vessel before finally being scrapped in 1963. One of the last Imperial Russian ships was broken down for razor blades and passed into the history books, but fortunately, the relatively recent discovery, with the fall of the Soviet Union, of dozens of private photo albums held by the Tsar and his family and staff show Standard in her full glory during her heyday, when the Russian royal family and their friends holidayed in the sun aboard the finest yacht in the world. Now, it's really tragic to think of beautiful vessels like the Standard being lost to the history books, but occasionally, every now and then, one manages to survive the scrapper's torch. One of these is the simply superb Savarona, one of the most beautiful yachts ever built, that today serves as a Turkish ship of state, but which actually began its life all the way back in 1931, and her designers were one of history's greatest. In the late 1920s, American socialite and heiress Emily Roebling Cadwallader approached a naval engineering firm to construct for her a magnificent floating palace for private use. The firm she chose was none other than Gibbs & Cox Co., headed by legendary naval architect William Francis Gibbs. By then, Gibbs had made a name for himself by refurbishing the massive liner SS Leviathan before he'd gone on to lead a number of high-profile projects. He and his team had designed a series of impressive, magnificent ocean liners for Matson lines, including the gorgeous SS Malolo in the mid-20s, intended for the company's Pacific services. It may have been the Matson ships that actually inspired Cadwallader to approach Gibbs & Cox in the first place. She could have picked a far worse team to design her vessel, but the actual task of designing the ship was passed mainly to Gibbs' partner, Irving Cox, who had previously run Cox & Stevens, which was a specialist yacht design firm. Similarly to Standard, Savarona was designed to resemble much older, traditional sailing vessels, but the inclusion of two towering smokestacks gave away the fact that the ship was really powered by modern steam turbines. As ever though, the graceful, old-fashioned lines concealed a litany of technologically cutting-edge features, including auto-stabilizers. Of course, the interior was just as spectacular as the exterior. The entire thing cost the equivalent of over $500 million in today's money to build. But while the Cadwalladers coughed up the dough to actually build their dream ship, and they enjoyed it for about 6 years, in 1937, charges of tax fraud sunk the couple. The magnificent ship had to be sold, when, in 1937, it was purchased by the Turkish government for the elderly and frail statesman Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Since the 1930s, it has remained with the Turkish government, and today it functions as a ship of state, where dignitaries can host formal receptions and welcome guests. Severona has had her original turbine engines removed and replaced with diesels, and her interiors have been updated with modern amenities like a jacuzzi and a gym being added, but there can be absolutely no denying that the vessel's graceful lines mark her out as one of the most beautiful ships still afloat in the world today. Now finally, we come to one more magnificent ship of state, a yacht that more resembles something like an ocean liner mixed with a warship, like an early cruiser, than it does a yacht. The Hohenzollern II, Imperial Germany's yacht of state through the 1890s, was built at a time when Germany was keen to impress the world with its shipbuilding might. She was built at AG Vulcan, a skilled shipyard which specialised in passenger liners and warships alike. This was probably their most prestigious commission, however, as the vessel would be used by the Kaiser himself. The design called for powerful steam engines, amazingly lavish interiors, and an exterior that would impress foreign dignitaries wherever the Kaiser and his ship were seen on tour. The result was a sleek, militaristic vessel with an inverted bow, which was then more commonly found on German cruisers. Inside, though, the ship resembled a palace, with incredibly intricate detailing and panels, and a massive banquet hall which could host roaring dinners of state. Unlike other yachts of state, Germany wanted Hohenzollern to cast aside any throwbacks to older styles or more traditional lines. The ship carried no redundant masts whatsoever, and instead featured, quite proudly, 2 enormously tall funnels. At over 4,000 tons, she was, for her day, one of the largest yachts ever built in the world. With her impressive silhouette, the yacht became a regular sight in major ports around the world, like New York, and it's thought that Kaiser Wilhelm himself spent around 4 years in total living on the ship. With Germany's loss of the First World War, the vessel was actually retained by the German government and not awarded to any Allied power as a reparation. Instead, she passed on to the Weimar government, who, seeing little use for the vessel's excesses, instead elected to have her scrapped. Now yes, there probably have been bigger and more impressive, more expensive yachts built since then, but it's hard to argue with the fact that with their fine lines and their elegant silhouettes, these yachts are, without a doubt, some of the most magnificent boats and ships ever built in history. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we get new videos out weekly. If you want to support my work and get really cool perks like behind the scenes and early access, please visit my Patreon in the link in the description below, or sign up as a YouTube member. Come and join the crew. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.